Hi Vikings, I'm Terry,
And I'm Susan. Welcome to Vik Equip.
where we are equipping you, our students, to be successful in the classroom.
Have you ever played Spoons? It's a fast-moving card game where everybody has cards in their hands trying to get four of a kind, and there are spoons in the middle of the table. And when you get the four of a kind, you reach out and you grab a spoon, and everybody else then grabs the spoons. But it's sort of like musical chairs. There's one less spoon than the number of players, and someone always gets left out. When I think about reading, that's what I think of, is the game of spoons. Many times in the game of spoons, somebody will miss the spoon because they're so focused on the cards. In reading, many times our goal is to gain comprehension, to gain understanding, but we're so focused on the words that we miss out on the comprehension. We've all been there. When we've read an article, we know we've read every single word, and yet we get to the end of it and we can't remember anything we've read. Because of this, there are several strategies in place that will help us to improve our comprehension. Grab the comprehension as well as work with the words. And so I want to teach you about one of those in this video called SQ3R. SQ3R was invented in the 1940s. What was going on in our country in the 40s? That's right. We had a world war going on. And at that time, we were introducing a new piece of equipment called a helicopter. The pilots were having a hard time being able to read through the hefty manuals. And so the military reached out to the world of academia and said, can you help us come up with a plan that will help our pilots digest the material quickly and retain what they've read? Francis Robinson was a psychology professor at Ohio State University, and he and his team came up with SQ3R. So what is this model? Well, each of the letters stands for something. S stands for survey. Survey means that before you ever begin to read an article or a chapter in a textbook, take a few minutes to look at it. Have you ever been reading to a child and you're trying to read the story, but they keep asking questions about the picture? And what do we usually say? We'll look at that in a second. Listen to the words first. But the truth is, our mind can't focus on the words because it's too busy trying to look at the picture. So Francis Robinson says, take a moment, look at the pictures first, look at graphs, look at all of that before you ever begin to read. Identify how the article is organized, if it has like subheadings or titles, how it's organized. This will keep your mind engaged with the words when you're ready to sit down and read. So look at it first, right? Survey it. Decide, what do I think this article is about? What do I think this chapter is going to cover? Okay, so survey. Then you begin to question. Ask yourself, what do I already know about this topic? And what would I like to know about this topic? What would I guess that the experts are going to say about this topic? So you're just trying to get your mind more engaged in the reading before you ever start reading itself. Then you're ready for the 3 R's. They stand for read, recite, and review. Read is when we actually interact with the words themselves. So now we're reading, but we're reading having already surveyed and questioned. So we're a little more apt to stay engaged. After we read a paragraph, we stop and we recite. What did that paragraph say? If I can't sum up in a few words what the paragraph said, I stop right there. I go back and I read the paragraph again. This keeps me from getting all the way to the end of the article and not having a clue what I just read. At least now I'm just rereading a paragraph. But if I can recite after each paragraph in just a few words what I've just read, what I've just learned, I'm probably on track for great comprehension. When I get to the end of my article, I then review. It's kind of that idea with topic and main ideas. What did I just read about? What did I learn about it? So I'm reviewing it, and if I can review the entire article, I always call it an elevator conversation. You can have a short conversation from the first floor to the third floor, right? What can I say about this article or this chapter if I was explaining it to someone in the elevator from first to third floor, right? If I can do that, I have probably gained the comprehension. Let's see how this practically plays out on an article. For those of you who are athletes, It might be beneficial for you to think of this like a game strategy, right? I think about the survey and the question. If you're going to go play a game of basketball, do you just walk out on the court on Friday night and start to play? Absolutely not. You've had warm-ups, stretches. You do all of those things ahead of time. That's what survey and question do for you. They sort of stretch your mind. They're the pre-game elements. Then you have the read and recite. To me, this is the game. This is when you are on the court, you're giving it your best, right? And then when you're finished, does everybody just high five and go off until the following Friday night? Absolutely not. You sit down in the locker room or the dugout and you review what you did right, what you did wrong. And so it's the same thing with SQ3R. You've got this pre-game game and then a review of the game. I like it in this analogy because I'm not an athlete. This is the only way I get to be an athlete is when it comes to reading. So let's take a look at it. Let's play the game here with this little article from NEA Today. It was written in May 2004. Part of the survey is noticing title, noticing author, noticing date. So as soon as I see that this was a 2004, I stop and I think, oh, that's been a few years ago. Right? So it's going to be already in my mind, I'm starting to ask the question, I wonder if the information is still relevant. Is this old? Have things changed? How would it look differently today than it did in 2004? So you can see where those questions are starting to come in. I survey it, I look and I see that there are some bold headings and it looks like they're individuals' names. As I look at their names, I can also see that they're all educators. An English teacher, 7th grade, high school guidance counselor, a 9th grade English teacher, a social worker. So I can see that these are people who are involved in education. I see from the title that they're asking if we should reward good grades with money and prizes. Okay, so what kind of incentive do we give to students? All right, so I've surveyed it. I see that I'm going to get 4 opinions in this particular article. Okay, question. What do I know about good grades with money and prizes? Well, my parents would reward me with a pizza party sometimes, things like that, if I brought home a report card and it was good. I did the same thing for my kids, but I tried not to bribe them. You know, I didn't want to say, okay, you'll get this if you do that. Like it was more of a reward afterwards. So I kind of have that sort of information rolling around in my head now as I'm reading my article to see if I did this thing right with my kids or not, right? According to the experts, did I do okay? So that's my questioning. What would I like to learn? I'd like to see what the experts say. I'd like to see what they say. So now I'm ready to read and recite. And what that's going to involve, we're just going to do it for 1 paragraph. But if I do this, Margot, who's a 7th grade English teacher from Utah, says, I believe we can offer prizes, food, money, or field trips to students for good grades. I don't see the difference between offering students prizes and money for good grades and having a 3.0 or for B and above students, a dance for them, or a special assembly. A reward is a reward. Most students who work hard for good grades would do it without the prizes and dances, so the prizes and money are simply an added bonus that they can choose to accept or decline. Students who cheat, beg, badger, and whine for a good grade in order to earn money or prizes generally do not maintain a good grade for long. Intrinsic values usually have the upper hand in the end. Stop. So when we look at this, we've read it now, we're ready to recite it. What does Margot Ungrich believe? Does she think that we should reward good grades with money and prizes? Absolutely. She sees no problem with that. She doesn't see any problem with money or prizes, and she believes that it doesn't really interfere with a student's natural desire to learn because intrinsic values will win out in the end, right? So that is her opinion. Yes. What we would do then is we would go through each of these. We would read, and then we would recite. What does this person believe? We would go through all 4. Once we finish that, we would stop and ask ourselves, now, what was the entire article about? As I read this article, I see that each one of them has a different opinion. So this article doesn't necessarily give me advice as to what I should do with my kids. Instead, it basically told me that there's division in the opinions of educators, right? I'm going to show you something that I do. If you can kind of see this there on your screen, this is how I work my SQ3R. I call it the SQ3R 4 square. And so I have 4 squares. In the first square, I read and recite. I look for words that I may not be familiar with. I list those there. And this is where I can make my guess as to what the article's about. This is where I ask my questions. Do prizes motivate me? Do I want my kids motivated by prizes? What do teachers say? What do kids think? I have kind of a place where I'm thinking pros, cons. Then when I read and I recited, you can see that I gave an opinion for each of my 4 educators. I just gave a real little sentence of what they thought. And then here's my review. The most important thing I walk away with is that some educators are for it and some educators are against it. My main idea, educators are divided when it comes to the subject of rewarding good grades. So I may have wanted to get a clear-cut answer. That's not what this article was written about. It was to provide you opinions on both sides of the issue. Right, so SQ3R is a great way to help you stay engaged. You can see that if you're stopping to read and recite, and especially if you're taking notes as you go, that your mind will stay engaged, and it will certainly help your comprehension level to raise. It's all about reading the words and still grabbing the comprehension.